Hi there, spiritual psychic Cynthia Killian here, also known as Psychic Cynthia, and welcome. You may be wondering, when our loved ones die, when they shed these earthly skins that we call a body, can they reach back across from the other side and communicate with us? In other words, can they give us signs or messages that they're okay? Can they talk back with us here? I say that you might be wondering that because this seems to be a topic that comes up often in my conversations with students and clients and just daily conversations. And I'm thinking about it myself now, mainly because there have been several people reaching out to me lately sharing about what they thought might be a dream from a loved one who's passed on from the other side. And also because I just had somebody pass in my life just a few days ago on Saturday. I'm filming on Tuesday, and my father-in-law passed on Saturday morning to the other side after a long struggle with Parkinson's. So it was a welcome blessing for him to move on in many ways. But I was thinking about that because I had some signs. We had some signs, my husband and I. We had some signs that Winton was reaching back and letting us know that he is okay. We had those signs already. So my answer to the question, if you're wondering, can our loved ones reach back from the other side once they pass? Can they communicate with us? Can they give us signs that they're okay? My answer to that question is absolutely, they can. We just have to be awake. We have to be open. We have to be listening, dear one, and we have to keep our eyes open. And in my experience as a professional psychic medium and a psychic teacher, often our loved ones, the spirits, do reach back from the other side. More often than not, they try to reach their loved ones with signs, but also more often than not, we don't see that. We don't recognize it. Maybe we do see the signs, but we tend to negate them. And I understand it's easy enough to happen because what you might want to think of is that when a person dies, and we'll all die, by the way, so when you and I die, and when your loved ones who have passed, when they died, that is a great release, from what I understand, from what the spirits tell me when I communicate in trance or in readings. For many of them, it is a great release or a pleasant surprise. Maybe not for everybody, but for many. So there's a release in shedding the body, especially if they've been ill or struggled with physical problems. To let go of this body can be shocking at first, but then quite pleasant. But they're letting go of that body and emerging more into the spiritual. And that takes energy, okay? Can you imagine that? That dying takes a whole heck of a lot of energy. Especially because most of us don't remember that we've died before, or at least I believe we have. I do believe in reincarnation, but even if you don't believe in reincarnation, can you understand how dying might take a lot of energy from the soul? And so the soul has to regroup. When you die, when your loved ones die, they need a little bit of time to regroup on the other side. And they don't necessarily have a lot of energy right away to be reaching back, okay? They don't have a lot of energy, most of them, nor do they even have the knowledge of how to make some grand, big gesture. But they do often have the desire. In my observation, many of our loved ones who passed on desire to reach back and let their loved ones know they're okay, especially if you're really grieving them hard. And if you're not understanding like I am, I'm understanding that, say, when my father-in-law passed, or when a friend passed, or my mother, or all these people that I've known who passed, I understand that they continue to exist on the other side. So even though I might miss them here, there is joy in knowing that they will continue on. And so I don't fear death myself. I don't fear it for the people I love, and I don't fear it for myself. I look forward to it someday, to the next chapter of existence. But maybe you don't have that feeling, and maybe you're afraid for your loved ones, and they can feel that usually. If they've passed, they can feel your grief. And they do want to reassure us often. So they will try to reach us even if they've just died and they don't have hardly any energy because they've used a lot of it. I mean, you have to understand that to die from this body is to go through the process into the other realms, the birth process. It's to go through being born in the other realms. Now, I'm not saying that everybody reincarnates right away. What I'm saying is that when you die from this body, you are reborn onto the other side. And that takes great energy. So they don't have a lot of energy left, and they are babies, so to speak, on the other side. They may not even be able to move their astral bodies very well right away unless they happen to have been a student of mysticism or the occult and learned how to work with their astral body while they were still alive in a body. But most people don't do that, right? So they've got a lot to learn, and they're, resting. They need to rest some after they die, but they also want to reach back to you. Well, how are they going to do it then? Are they going to do it with grand fireworks? I mean, sometimes, yes. Sometimes it seems the spirits are very industrious and very surprising and spectacular. But usually that's later on. So it takes them a while to gain some energy. It takes them a while to gain some skills to reach back. Most of them can do something small, though. In other words, most of them can reach back in some way. They can give you a sign. It's going to be a subtle sign. The problem is most of the time I should say, it's going to be a subtle sign. Sometimes it's not so subtle, but even when it's not so subtle, most of us, when somebody has gone, we're so wrapped up in our own grief, we don't bother to really listen, open, and just pay attention and look for those signs. So that's what I would say to you. If you are someone who is, you're missing someone in your heart, someone has passed on, and you would like to know they're okay, you would like to hear from them, I guarantee you they're trying to give you a message, just maybe a sign that they're okay. You just need to keep your eyes open. And just to give you some quick examples before I sign off, a personal example from recently. On the day my father-in-law passed, my husband and I, that night, he passed early in the morning, and then much later in the day, that night, we were watching one of our TV shows on Netflix. It's a new show we started watching, and we've watched, I don't know, maybe about 8 episodes there anyway. Anyway, I digress. So it was interesting. In the show, there was this scene that was totally unexpected where the main character meets a new friend, and then they're kind of frenemies, okay, so they don't like each other very much. But he meets this older friend, and they kind of challenge each other to piano duel. And anyway, they're sitting down at the piano playing together, and my husband is watching this. He says, "Oh my God, that reminds me so much of me and my dad." And then the next thing you know, they're doing different songs, the characters on the show. And then they launch into this really old-fashioned song that was the exact song that my husband and his dad used to play together. I mean, how cool is that? That on the very day that he had passed, we end up watching the show. Out of all the different shows we could be watching, because we watch a lot of different shows on there. We just mix it up and almost watch a different one every night. Here, these two men are sitting there playing this song on the piano that was the same old-fashioned song that my husband and his dad used to play many years ago. That's a sign, I believe. Now, some of you watching this might say, "Oh, well, that's just a coincidence." Maybe that's possible. How possible? What is the statistical likelihood? I'd like to see the numbers on that, okay? I think it's if you look at the factors, if you look at what are the odds that you would see something, two men in a show? What are the odds that you'd be watching the show? What are the odds that they'd be playing that exact song? It's a very old-fashioned song. Uh, what are the odds that it would be happening on the same day that this person died? I mean, I think if you actually started running those numbers, I mean, sure, you'd come up with something, and there are some chances that it could be coincidence. It's highly unlikely, though. It's very actually illogical to think that's a coincidence, I believe. Um, so I'm listening. We're paying attention. And I even said to my husband, well, that's a sign. I believe that's a sign from your dad. He just wants you to know he still exists. He's okay. Another thing I noticed too, and this is a little bit, I think, even more unusual. Last night, I heard a train. Now, we live about 2 miles, I think, from the train. I mean, we don't live real close. It's not right next door, but sometimes when the wind blows the right way, you can really hear it here. And this was in the middle of the night. It woke me up, and it seemed so loud. I have to tell you, this train was much louder than it normally is. It was almost like it was enhanced. I had been sleeping, and then the sound woke me up, and it was enhanced. And I did believe that was another sign from my husband's passed on father, because he was into trains. That was a big deal for him. He loved trains and model trains. So those are just some small examples of signs, and really I could probably talk much longer about different signs I've seen or signs I've heard of. I mean, I've heard clients talk about finding the quote-unquote pennies from heaven. Their loved ones leave them pennies. I also have friends who have deceased loved ones who will come to them in the form of a bird, a cardinal. So that's something interesting. And there are traditions, Native American traditions, will say certain birds can represent your passed on loved ones. The cardinal is one of them for some tribes. I think the raven or the crow might be another one. And, different tribes and different cultures throughout the world assign different animals the meaning of representing our passed on loved ones. But, just keep your eyes open. If someone you love has passed and you're wanting to know that they're okay or looking for a sign, keep your eyes open and your ears turned up and just pay attention. You have to be paying attention to find these signs. And, notice anything out of the ordinary. And for goodness sake, if you think it might be a sign, I mean, especially if you hear like their favorite song on the radio, or you see something you used to do together, acknowledge it, say thank you. What I hear from the spirits sometimes in the readings that I do for people is that they've been trying to reach their loved ones and they haven't been listening, or they've been discrediting. And, I mean, if you're getting all these little signs and you keep saying, oh, well, I thought it might be a sign, but it's probably just a coincidence. I mean, really, that's kind of rude. That's how I see it. I mean, here your loved one is working so hard to bring you a message from the other side, because it's not easy for them, okay? It takes a lot of energy. I mean, how easy is it for you to leave your body and go trawling around the other side? Let me ask you that. Well, they're leaving, their plane of existence, or not really leaving it, but they're reaching across from one plane to ours, so it's hard. Respect that. At least be willing to say it might be a sign. All right? So those are just a few thoughts I had on that. Oh, and the other thing is, when somebody dies, one thing that you can do if you want to keep that portal more open, and it also helps them to transition, it's just real simple, it is to light a candle to lead the way to the other side. And when you light the candle, just say a prayer that you are opening a portal for them to speak with you, your loved one, okay? Not just any spirit, okay? But your loved one. You're letting them know, you're remembering them. Do little rituals to remember them, not just the funeral, because the funerals that we have nowadays are mostly watered down in their power and symbolism. So light that candle, remember them, put something near the candle that symbolizes them. You might even put a little piece of their favorite food, or like what I did when my husband's father passed here this weekend. I lit the white candle and I let it burn like almost all day long. Of course, I was home. You have to do the supervised, so don't burn candles unsupervised. but I had a little piece of coconut cookie because that was something that he liked, and even had a little tiny piece of pie because he liked pie, homemade pie. I mean, a tiny piece, okay, in a little bowl nearby. And not because he eats physical food, but the spirits get the vibration of what you leave out. And then we also had this little gold train that my husband had that had actually belonged to his dad. So it was like the train is a symbol, to help have safe passage to the other side. And just little things like that to remember them energetically. It shows a beacon that you're thinking of them. And maybe I think that they can come back across through that beacon. And don't worry, it won't open up anything negative. I mean, as long as you state the intention, it's for that person and you're only putting small mementos there. You could do a picture. I didn't even do a picture, but you could do one, obviously, because the little things that I put there really clearly represented him. So anyway, those are some thoughts. And that's a very ancient practice in many religions. And we remember our loved ones just by putting out some objects that help us to remember them. That's all, okay? And that keeps the connection open, and keep your heart open. Don't just succumb to your grief. I mean, have your grief if you're grieving, and that's natural, understand. But grief doesn't really it doesn't facilitate spirit communication. In fact, it does the opposite many times. It puts a wall, like the wall of grief, makes it difficult for them to reach us sometimes. So, in addition to your normal and natural grieving process, dear one, or as part of it, let's say it's part of the grieving process, maybe, to remember your passed on loved ones often, to share stories if you can of the good times, to share stories of what you admired about them, how they inspired you in their heart, and keep their memories alive, honor their spirits, and that too will make it easier for you and them to stay connected between the various realms. That will allow them to reach back across to this world. And the other thing is too, they have their own lives. When they leave here, they still love us and care for us, but they have their own lessons. Often they will take on jobs on the other side. Their karma continues on the other side. Karma is not done just because you died here, or your dharma or your lessons. You still have a purpose on the other side. You still have things to learn and things to balance. So, they can't, I don't know if they can't, but they probably aren't going to just be hanging around you all the time, micromanaging your life. That's not what it's about. And thank goodness, right? You need to manage your life. But these are some things you can do, to keep your heart open, to keep the line of communication open, so to speak. So hopefully that helps. Thanks for tuning in and watching. Until next time, bright blessings and love to you all.